The consortium and its academic partners at 6 universities, including Binghamton University, Cornell, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Charles Clarkson, SUNY New Paltz, and the City University of New York, have partnered with more than 70 solar companies to help incubate New York's solar industry. 70 companies. These companies range from manufacturers to installers to tooling companies, and they are marketing their products throughout the region and just down the Hudson into New York City. And they are doing so to consumers that seek environmentally friendly alternatives to supply their energy needs. In addition to laying the groundwork for a major long-term solar energy industry presence in upstate New York, the program has delivered hundreds of new jobs for highly skilled workers, and done so already. Over 300 new jobs were created last year when we just got this started in upstate New York, 300 new jobs. 400 new jobs are being created this year. And by the end of next year, our expectation is that another 1,000 new solar-related jobs will have been created in parts of New York State, the Hudson Valley, the Southern Tier, and in other places around New York, and to do so as a direct result of this solar energy consortium efforts. While this is just one small example, there is a tremendous amount of potential for the creation of new green jobs throughout our country. One estimate from the RAND Corporation showed that by shifting 25% of our energy production to renewable resources, and to do so by 2025, we can create up to 5 million new jobs. During the campaign, President Obama promised to encourage such a transition, and we have already begun to make some very substantial progress, with over $30 billion now invested in energy efficiency and renewables through our Recovery Act. The transition to renewables is not only inevitable, and it is inevitable, but it is also urgent. As more and more of our oil resources are burned into the air, it is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain what's left. Today, we're seeing oil companies using increasingly riskier techniques to discover and drill for oil. In light of BP's recent oil spill in the Gulf, which is set to be the worst oil spill in our nation's history, one can't help but wonder what the consequences of a broken solar panel or wind turbine would have been. The need for a transition to new sources of energy could not be more obvious, and I hope it is getting more and more obvious to more and more people across our country. But while we have had some recent successes in that effort, we are still a long way from where we need to be. A little over a month ago, the same company that is spilling oil into the Gulf announced that they were tearing down a solar plant just 45 minutes up the road from where we are right now, up in Frederick, Maryland. To quote Chief Executive Tony Hayward, BP is, he says, moving to where we can manufacture cheaply, China and India. A well-educated workforce and the right investments in innovation will not alone succeed in bringing the new energy company from concept to reality. To ensure that we are not soon importing our solar panels, energy-efficient cars, and other new technologies from nations that are investing a very substantial amount more per capita in these growing industries, we must also revisit our own trade policy here. Trade is a critical component to our economy and is a means to building a more just and sustainable global economy. But we have to ensure that American workers are competing on a level playing field. That means current and future agreements must be structured in a way that spreads the benefits of expanded trade as broadly as possible, while preserving a healthy environment for the future, for generations to come. My concerns about the impact of free trade agreements, which I expressed when they were first being considered, on American jobs and the environment, have unfortunately begun to be realized. If you aren't sure about the impact of these agreements, take a drive through some of the old manufacturing towns in places like upstate New York, or better yet, just as Senator Stabenow was talking about, in Michigan, Ohio, a number of other places. Without appropriate safeguards, trade agreements can lead to lost American jobs, exploited foreign workers, and a degraded economy and environment. To help correct this problem, I have co-sponsored legislation entitled the Trade Reform, Accountability, Development, and Employment Act, which does essentially three things. First, it requires a comprehensive review of the major trade agreements on the books today. Second, it ensures that environment, labor, and human rights standards are addressed in future agreements. And third, it gives Congress the authority it needs to assert in proper constitutional role in the trade negotiation process, and to do so by significantly limiting future fast-track authority. Also helpful is President Obama's executive order to create the National Export Initiative, which aims to double U.S. exports over the next 5 years in support of 2 million jobs at home, something that is critically important. And we hope it's going to be accomplished here. But in order to grow our exports, we must also work to end currency manipulation by such countries as China. And we heard some pretty clear examples of that just a few minutes ago. China is unfairly subsidizing its exports and putting foreign imports at a significant disadvantage. Recently, I signed a letter to Treasury Secretary Geithner and Committee Secretary Locke expressing serious concerns about Chinese currency manipulations. This manipulation has exacerbated the U.S. trade deficit with China, which for non-oil goods grew from 26% in 2000 to 83% in 2009. That's amazing. That deficit is responsible for the loss of up to almost 2.5 million American jobs. The rampant Chinese inflation and accumulation of foreign resources created by this misalignment also threatens the stability and balance of the global financial system. For those reasons, I have called for the application of a countervailing duty and for the Department of Treasury to include China in its biannual agency report on currency manipulation. And that would be something very interesting to see. Moving forward, I am confident that we will eventually be able to resolve this imbalance, as it is ultimately not only bad for our economy, but also for China's. And that's something that is somewhat being understood over there, but nothing is being done about it. In conclusion, I am confident that the strength and ingenuity of the American workforce will enable us to regain our economic strength and continue being a world economic superpower. Despite having just undergone one of the deepest recessions in our nation's history, America is beginning to bounce back. During the last 3 months of the Bush administration, we lost an average 726,000 jobs. In the last 3 months, we have created an average 186,000 jobs. During the last quarter of the Bush administration, the economy contracted by 5.4%. We've now seen 3 quarters of economic growth. Most recently, we experienced 3.2% growth in the first quarter of this year. In March, sales of new homes surged nearly 27% to an annual rate of 411,000, the strongest month since last July, and the biggest monthly increase, remarkably, in 47 years. Home prices in February rose by 1.4%, posting the first year-to-year gain in more than 3 years. While millions of families are still hurting, things are just starting to turn around. The American economy has once again proven its resiliency, and I know that as we must maintain and further generate the improvement of our economy, this is just the beginning. By striking the right balance with regard to trade, making the right investments in education, and crafting a forward-looking strategy to capitalize on the new energy economy, I know we can ensure that our best days are still ahead. So thank you very, very much for having the patience to listen to me about these complicated issues. It's a deep appreciation for me to be here, and whatever else happens, I'll be happy to engage in it. Thanks very much.